Good evening, everyone. Welcome to TFC Daily. This is an initiative by the team at the Financial Coconut to keep you company during this tough time. So follow us on our social, check out all our podcasts for your continued learning enjoyment. Simply head to the financialcoconut.com for more details. We have different segments scheduled for you. And today we are very happy to welcome our guest for this segment, Mr. Jerviel Lim. He has more than 10 years of experience across HR operations, diversity and inclusion, partners and program management in public education, startup and non-profit sector. He is currently the culture and talent lead at a manufacturing Saas firm and is on a mission to redesign how people experience and view HR. Jerviel is also an IHRP-Certified Professional and hopes to spread awareness that HR should transform itself beyond paper and process coordinator to a strategic value business partner. And I'm your host, Adrian Tan, and very happy to see everyone here on this lovely Thursday evening. And before I let Jerviel start speaking, I just want to let you guys know that today we're going to be taking a different tangent because Jerviel actually is a HR professional. So over the past 3 episodes, we've been listening to people who have gone through career transition, people who may have coached or supported people in trying to become most valuable professional, as well as trying to raise your personal branding. But I think the key question that people may have in their mind is, would all this work or not? So I think this is very timely for us to speak with Jerviel to really understand if all these things that we have mentioned and talked about are all these just vanity metrics, like having more likes, more share on your social posts, or do they actually matter? So welcome, welcome Jerviel. Welcome to the show.
Hi, love to be here. Hi everyone. Hope you are safe and sound. I'm glad that able to spend this time with you during this stay home period.
And maybe to begin with, Jerviel, could you help people to understand a bit about your background? I understand I did a very short and condensed version of what you have done, but the fact is you have actually been through quite a number of different functions, as well as many different industries as well as sectors as well. So I think with that, people can better understand, okay, should I listen to this person or not?
Okay. It feels like an interview all over. So yeah, I've worked for 10 over years in just now what Adrian mentioned in different areas and different sectors. I first started off doing career advisory in NTUC. So I was doing a lot of career and training advising to low-wage workers, back-to-work women, mature workers, and young PMATs, right? So I was doing that for like 3 years, including like event management. So that kind of got me started into understanding how HR thinks, right? Because you kind of need to know what HR people or the folks are looking for, and therefore you're able to then advise better to the clients. And then after that, I switched over to the disability sector in the social service. So for that, I switched over to become like an account manager. So I was working a lot with employers, HR practitioners in helping them to design and customize their hiring policies or their workplaces to be a lot more inclusive. So that was really another further step into the HR's realm. Helping to write some like guidebooks on teaching HR how to do recruitment, right? Inclusive hiring, how do they do job redesign, and so on and so forth. So that was really, really exciting. So ever since then, I was like, hey, I've kind of dabbled a lot into, let's say, the recruitment, right? Sort of work. And I wanted to try other different pillars of HR. So that started my journey going to education sector, learning about training and development. But then after that, in between, after that the third stint, I went over to a startup because that time startup was really booming and a lot of things was happening at startup. It was cool. You wear jeans, you wear slippers, and and all that. So I went to a startup and I was doing project management, working with different types of startups in that sense, right? And it was from there I switched on. I moved on to the next role, which was my first HR role. So it's actually quite surprising. I spent like maybe like 5 years each. Then I went to take on a really full HR role per se. So that started my whole journey of going to HR. So the past 4 jobs I had, it was really a full HR work. So from recruitment all the way to engagement to a little bit of L&D and stuff like that. So people ask me how why I become HR. Of course, there are also the good reasons why, of course, because I was exposed to different HR professionals and job seekers and all that. But actually, one of the funny thing is because I don't have I did encounter like not so good HR experience. So a lot of times people go into a certain role because they're inspired by someone, right? But mine was like kind of opposite. Like I was wondering, is that how HR should be, right? Just doing all the paperwork, signing you up for courses, making sure your MC is submitted, chop and sign, and then that's it. Or actually, it's supposed to be more, right? So that was one of the main reasons why I then wanted to go into HR, because I really want to redesign how people experience HR. Yeah.
That's interesting. It actually reminded me of a story. I remember when Chan Chun Sing, he was still the NTUC SecGen, and there was an event. And he basically was just trying to understand if there's anyone in the crowd who actually came from business side to become HR. So this guy put up his hand. Oh, where you come from? Oh, finance sector. You see, finance sector to HR. What, sir, why you join HR? Oh, because I was retrenched by the bank. So a lot of instances are really due to a series of events and a chain of different encounters to arrive at where you are, which is very interesting in your case. But I think I want to start off by really touching on, or try to address the elephant in the room, because for many people, especially due to their interaction with HR seems to do very low value things. How to apply leave, how to calculate my claim, this kind of small little stuff. Are there actually bigger picture things that HR or HR advisors get to do?
Yes, and actually there's a few factors to how should I say, how people experience HR. Sometimes depending on the company life cycle, right? If it's like a 20, 30 people, then maybe the HR that you have are mainly just doing operational work, which is very important, right? Making sure you get paid on time, you get your MC, all these are very important. But I think as the company begins to grow, of course, then the HR should also expand its work, right? Beyond just operational things. And which is something that I also believe in HR to add more value. And I hope that there's people listening to this, they are also HR, right? Yeah. That we should. So the strategic work is really revolving around workforce planning, right? Sitting down with the business, the leaders, the business unit directors, mapping out what are some of the manpower requirements. And it's not just like, oh, I need 5% for the next 1 year, right? It's, oh, you need 5% the next 1 year. Are these 5 talents available in the market, right? Because a lot of times, the directors will give you like unicorn job description, which you cannot find in the market, right? But that's what they want. So it's a lot of that discussion and conversation you have the leaders. Ultimately it's really helping the company to be future-proofing itself, right? Right now with the time of COVID, right? So then you have to think about how do you manage hybrid work? And if let's say you want to go into hybrid work, then how do you go about measuring performance, right? Because it's no longer just like you sit there 9 to 6 and then that's performance, right? That is only output, but that's not outcome, right? So that's a lot of the strategic, some examples of the strategic work that can be done in that sense. But of course, not forgetting that all these HR operations are very, very important still. Yeah.
So I guess because people tend to interface with HR when it comes to more of the monotonous daily interactive affair, which is why they don't really get to see all this kind of stuff. So for people listening out there, if you're still curious, yes, all this kind of performance management, alignment, all this are actually done by your HR. It doesn't appear magically. So go ahead.
And the thing is, because we deal with HR, and HR, the word human. So naturally at work, when there's more than 2 humans, there's bound to be drama. There's bound to be, disputes and disagreement. But these are not seen by you, right? Because it's not like your HR will tell you, oh, I'm trying to settle a poor performer, or I'm trying to settle some disagreement out there. You don't get to see all this, but your HR is really hard at work behind all those scenes as well. Yeah.
As the saying goes, you praise in public, but you scold in private.
Yeah.
So I think that's a very good practice that every HR and leaders should take on. So because of today's session, there's so many questions that came in through our Telegram channel. So I'm going to quickly flood you with all these questions before we run out of time. And we're just going to start off with really seeing things from the job seeker perspective. So we have a lot of audience who may be looking to change their job, who may be looking to even step into the job market for the very first time. So for some of them, they may not even know how the whole recruitment vetting process actually works. Like what actually goes through the HR and hiring manager's mind during the whole journey. Could you help people to break it down, please?
Wow, this is a whole module by itself. I will try to give some key pointers here. I think ultimately when as a HR or as a recruiter, I will always tell my team, right, in your mind you should have a mental checklist. Mental checklists are the boxes or criteria that we want to see from the person, be it at the resume level or during the interviews, right? And part of this checklist already translated into the JD itself already. Right. So for you out there, who are, doing a job application, make sure that when you look at the JD, right, you can meet like 60-70% of it. Yeah, because your resume may go through applicant tracking system, or AI that may scan for keywords. Right. So if let's say it's a marketing job role, and then there are, in marketing space, there's a lot of jargons and lingo such as conversion, Google Analytics, all these kind of marketing keywords. These are the tick boxes that the the recruiter have in their mind, also in the system itself. So when your resume comes through the application or when you're doing interview, right, actually the recruiter is actually looking out for all these things to check off. So as much as possible, you should be able to check off all these items. Of course, you must have the skills, not that you kind of smoke it and fluff it when you actually don't have it, because it's worse when we find out that you actually don't have it, right? So be truthful. Make sure that you meet 60-70% of the criteria over there. The thing is, I mean, I'll not go in so much about in terms of job description, but I think what I'm trying to do, I want to share more is actually, we have seen cases, right, as a recruiter, I have seen cases whereby someone actually meets a lot of the checkbox, right, but just something just not right. Right? It could be in terms of the way the person communicate. It could be when we suss out questions revolving teamwork, right? We can find that this person is very solo. And especially in the tech world or the startup world, not that we don't, we don't want people to be independent, but we don't want someone who is just totally cut off from the rest of the team, because in the startup is what we call all hands on deck. Everybody has to chip in to help when there's a crisis and all. So while this person could be like taking off all the boxes, terrific in programming, excellent in marketing and all that, right? But if you find that sometimes this person, we just feel that it will not help to add value to the culture, will not help to advance the cultural values, then we may not want to go ahead. So I have incidences like that whereby this person just tick all the boxes, right? But in the end, we still didn't want, because we just didn't think that this person will help us to advance the culture. Yeah. So that's the point on to your question.
So I think to summarize, of course, firstly on the resume part, to keyword optimize it, of course, with valid content. And second of all, to bear in mind that for companies that are hiring you, company is a team sport lah. It's not a solo sport. Solo sport, you better off become freelancer on Fiverr lah. But if you want to play team sport, you want to play football, then you have to go by the rules lah.
Yeah.
And I think what many senior leaders also attempts to do is, and maybe I can quote something that I've seen in a video on Netflix. It actually profiled Jose Mourinho, and he mentioned about, my job here, and this is back in Real Madrid, my job here is not to teach Ronaldo how to play football. My job here is to teach Ronaldo how to play with other players. So I think that really hit the spot lah, in trying to emphasize how important teamwork is. Okay,
Yes.
so that aside, we'll go down to a bit more of the nitty-gritty. At this stage, of course, you have during the recruitment phase, you have people asking for things, you have HR asking for things. Like for example, when it comes to certain things like degree versus relevant experience. This is something that I think on the back of many people's mind, they are still quite curious, because I think we are getting a lot of mixed signal lah. Sometimes government say, oh no, skills, but then on the other hand, oh, can I have your PSLE score? So are all these actually important? Is my PSLE score really so important? Can I just tell people I never take PSLE or I lost my cert?
If you meet these kind of companies, maybe you should really give second thoughts whether you want to join those companies or not. Like in my own opinion, I think for me and wherever I am right now, right, we are not so concerned about what degree you have or where it comes from. if you have a degree, say in computer science, sure, right, that will help to lessen or bring down the learning curve, right? Let's say you want to become programmer and all that. But I think it's really more of how that person is actually at work, how he or she has been interacting with people around, at the same time still delivering value and performance. I've hired people who okay, so my previous startup, I was looking for an intern, right? This is really at the intern level, right? But I think it can extrapolate and connect to other stories as well. I hired her, and she has no HR background. She wasn't doing HR tertiary education. I took her in, and she became one of my best performing HR intern ever. It was really about the attitude that she had, that she was willing to get her hands dirty, roll out her sleeve, and do it and learn, and be so curious about learning, right? So, of course, if she has a HR degree or whatsoever, it will make teaching and learning and development a lot easier for her. But that is just trying to give you a little bit of head start, but actually not a lot. Yeah, I mean, even for me, I don't come from a HR degree background, but I still get into this space as well. So, I think it's really not so much about the education level cert, but of course more like the application of it. But at the same time, I think what's more important is actually how you work in a team setting, how you are in a team. Yeah.
I think maybe also to one extent, because that intern knowing that he or she do not have the HR certificate or degree, so they may tend to overcompensate through better attitude lah, more curious and all that lah. Whereas someone with a fancy degree from a good university will be like, oh, I got a question, talk to my degree. So I'm imagining that kind of scenario lah, which of course help to differentiate people a lot. And then the other thing that of course our audience will be interested to find out. So at the stage where, of course, when screening is happening, and of course you reach a stage where you have an employment contract, how negotiable are a typical employment contract? Is it cast in stone that you have to see it as a take it or leave it kind of thing? Or are there always bandwidth when it comes to how HR would position an employment contract? Could you give us the behind the scene information so audience will know how to game the system next time?
I think there's a lot of things that make up a com and band package, right? It's not just your monthly salary. It could be the commission if, let's say, you are a sales role. It could be like the number of annual leaves. It could be whether this company offers you work from home, which right now everybody should work from home, and other things like paternity or sabbatical or education sponsorship and all that. So you should look at the total package as a whole, right? But of course, I think from agent's question, it's more like, okay, maybe more like the negotiable, maybe the salary portion, right? I think there's always room to negotiate in that sense, because I think from HR side, sometimes we will also give a little bit of buffer lah. Like we actually maybe sometimes can pay, let's say $Y, right, as our max. But normally we may just say, okay, maybe we go for X first, right? Because considering the demand and supply, the market pay range, and of course what the value this person can bring and the potential and stuff like that, right? So definitely can nego. I think it's about how you as a candidate want to go about negotiating that, right? I think that is actually the crux of the question. I think do your homework, right? Try to go and find out what exactly is the rough pay range for this role, right, at your experience level. Because maybe you have 5 years, you shouldn't maybe be looking at someone with 3 years experience, right, in the salary report, for example.
So where can people go and find out?
I mean, you can look at online. I know that a lot of agencies, they have their annual salary report and all that. But one interesting thing that also on Netflix, right, where Patty McCord was still the chief talent officer, she encouraged her staff to go for interviews. And then all her people, all very curious, right? And people in the same sector ask her, why you get your engineers to go for interview? Aren't you scared that they will leave and all that? But she said, that's the best benchmark. I know what the market is paying them. That's the best way. So in a way, I would say I'll encourage a lot of you to maybe start going for some interviews, know where you stand in the market, because that's the best, reflection of how much someone else is willing to pay, right? So you have that data. So that's one way lah, right? So then when you go into the salary nego, you should frame your conversation in such a way that that you can add value, right? You see yourself being aligned to the future goals of the organization. Yeah, so you should be saying a lot on that front. Of course, then showing, the salary that people of this caliber or of this experience actually earns around this, and how you can go about achieving those results that they want, and building a case for you to get that amount, right? But I see at the end of the day, right, you also, again, you have to look at the total package. And sometimes the total package doesn't necessarily always mean monetary. It can also mean your career progression itself also. If you're always wanting to get that break into an assistant manager role or manager role, and happen that this role can give it to you, then maybe you want to take it first, right? And then perform on the job itself to add value down the road. Yeah, so you may not win the salary nego now, but you should go in and prove yourself that you are worth.
So in a way, if the company were to offer you a $10,000 a month salary, but then job title is pantry auntie, then you probably may not want to take on because there's really not much career growth, and you're probably just stuck there forever in your life. But to what you mentioned about Netflix, it reminded me of me doing the same thing when I was running my first business. I actually reached out to Headhunter to poach my people, but then my intention was to get rid of them because I too paiseh to tell them to fuck off. So that's another thing. So okay, still on career seeker. One thing I would like to check would be for people who is trying to go through a mid-career switch, no experience in the industry. When you see a candidate like this, and of course there will be many of them from different walks of life. But which are the ones that somehow caught your attention, and what did they do differently that actually caught your attention, and somehow, of course, through a series of other process, landed up in your company?
Wow. Okay, so I used to have a finance manager. He looks very serious, right? But he's actually like very nice person deep with him. But good as a finance person, the serious look, but still nice. So he actually was doing legal stuff. I don't think he has a lot of exposure that time in the finance space, right? So he joined my previous company earlier than me. So when I was talking to him, he actually did a career switch. So he was doing a lot of legal work and all that, and then he had to take a career break because to take care of his ailing mom, which then after a period of time, the mom passed away and then he was going back to the workforce. And that time he was really like late 40s, early 50s. I hope I got his age right so late 40s, early 50s. And he became our finance manager. So it was quite curious, right? Like, how did he slowly pivot and all that, right? It's because he actually likes to play a lot of investment. So he was learning through those experiences to do that. And of course, he's not totally foreign to finance ops. Like he did a bit last time also but because of that, he actually became our finance manager, and he was taking care of the finances very well because he plays a lot of investment, right? He had to study a lot. So that time my startup had to depend a lot on him to how much to do like finance modeling and stuff like that. So I think it's really about the attitude. I mean, when my ex-CEO hired him, was really a lot about his attitude because he was really very humble and all that. So I guess when you are making a career switch, you also have to identify, it's not so much about whether you had a direct experience. If you have, that's great. But if you don't, it's really about the transferable skills, but also the transferable attitude that you have. Right? I mean, for me, I also career switch halfway, right? Chinese saying I also 半路出家 type. So I also had to because I was very curious about HR. So actually I did a lot of studies. I was going for Coursera on my own and stuff like that. Right now doing my SMU HR graduate cert. I was doing a lot of reading. So it's really about you having to self-learn along the way and show interest that you want to do it. And sometimes you happen maybe to meet someone lucky employer or boss who is willing to take you in and give you, a try.
So mixture of attitude and transferable skills lah. So to our chief coconut Reggie, if you're hearing this, you can potentially become a finance manager. Okay, I'll give you CFO lah. Give you CFO.
CFO.
So that will wrap up the segment on career seeker. Now, of course, moving along, there will also be a segment of people who are already in something lah. People who are happy, contented to be in their job, but they want to really climb up the career ladder. So not so much, of course, on how they're going to do it, because that really depends on a lot of factors. But I think one of the key things that they may be interested to learn is actually HR. Do they actually have a say in who goes up the career ladder? That's one of the key things that I think people will be curious about.
Okay. We have a say, but the thing is we need the data points. And where the data points come from? You. Right? You have to prove your worth. You have to prove through your results. Those are the data points. Then with the data points, we can go into whatever talent management tool, like the common one that we use are like 9box, right? The 9box talent management. Then we're able to plonk in the person and decide who are the hypos, who are the joggers, which are the stable performer, who are the not so good performer. Yeah. So yes, we have a say, but the data has to come from all of you who are working in the organization. Yeah. But Auckland, I think most importantly is the other side is also that while we have that say, but we don't have the ultimate say. I think as HR, I believe that is also respecting the business unit's decision as well, right? So I always tell my team is we will always give as much information as we can to the business directors and all that, right? Giving them a lot of the different perspective about, let's say, this person. But ultimately, whether this person get hired or get promoted, that's the decision of the business unit director. We only do what we can. Because to me, it's very simple, right? It's only a one-day job. I promote this person to assistant director, but it's his boss who had to handle him 364 days, not me, right? So ultimately, I will normally make the manager or the boss to be responsible for whoever he or she brings in or promote. Yeah.
Okay, and for people who are unsure of what that 9box Jerviel just mentioned, it is not what home delivery bento set. It is a performance management framework to decide where people stand and all that. So it's some of the matrix, but you can Google more about it. So the rest of the question, interestingly, given that we are not a very materialistic country, it's all about salary. So I will start with the first one. Why we cannot compare salary? Why my HR always tell me cannot compare my salary with my colleague? Why? Why is that the case?
I really think it depends on the culture of the organization. Of course, that is also affected by the pay philosophy in the organization itself. So I've seen organizations, right, that only have a fixed amount for each job grade. I think most of us will have seen the grade 1 2,005 to 3,000, grade 2 whatever, right? Those ranges. But I've seen actually companies who only have just grade 1 fresh grad, right? 3,006 period. And then the next level is, let's say, 4,4. So I was curious, right? And I asked, how come you all did something like this? And then the person the head of the team said that is to remove all this unnecessary conversation and comparison so that people can just focus at the work. So that was the culture that we're building. Everybody just laser focus on the work. And then you are very clear, right? If you get promoted to grade 3, that's the amount. There's nothing, right? And the thing is, of course, to move from grade to grade, they actually have a lot of criteria to prove that you're actually worth that jump in salary also, right? So that is dependent on the culture. So a lot of times in the why you don't share with other people, I think by and large, I also work and seen in big organizations because there are a lot of factors into deciding someone's salary, right? You all can be doing the same job, but maybe this person come from Harvard, you come from Ngee Ann Polytechnic, for example, right? Or maybe this person has worked for 5 years, this one worked for 10 years, but both are manager, right? So there will be certain factors that contributes to that differences. Yeah. So it's and the thing is that is very hard to gauge. And then if you let everybody know that everybody start asking question, right? I also diploma holder, do same job. All this conversation will happen lah. Yeah. So I wouldn't say that would be a very nice solution to all of it. But I think if you shouldn't have to compare with other peers. I think you should be focusing on comparing yourself with the outside market. Whether someone else doing the same job as you is actually earning more than you or less than you. No point you compare like that, ma. Because if let's say you're thinking about your career growth, maybe beyond your current place, then you should be comparing your salary with other people outside. That will be a true measurement. Because otherwise it's all the same range, right? Then what's the point of comparing?
Exactly. So it's really seeing a lot of how you want to basically the kind of people that you want to compare with. Like you want to compare within a company or outside of a company, and of course the key thing is where you can seek improvement. Now, having said that, when it comes to asking for pay rise, I said, okay, I'm still contented with my company, but I think I should be paid more, lah. But firstly, there is usually very little or no visibility about the pay range, especially, the thing that you mentioned, grade 1, how much and all that. Sometimes these are information that are not available to the employees. So with that, how do they exactly know how much they are worth? And also, secondly, I think when would be a good time for them to ask for a pay rise?
Okay. Like I mentioned, I don't think your HR will tell you what's the pay range lah. I mean, of course, maybe every time you open your performance or your annual increment letter, they will tell you, oh, you move to this grade, this is your range lah. Maybe that will give you a good sense. So that is one data point. But I would say that go out and interview. Go and talk to people outside. Go and meet other interviewers in other sectors, same job in other sectors or other companies, how much they are paying. I think that's actually the best reflection of what's in the market, right? So very, very, very funny, right? As HR, I'm asking all my folks to go for a lot of interviews. You should, right? So that's one way to get a data point. I think in terms of data point, that's one. I think if it's about asking for pay raise, I mentioned doing your homework, going in with the mindset that it's a conversation. And the thing is, conversation will take time. You cannot go in and expect that the next 3 days, your HR will come back to you with a pay raise. No, it's a conversation. And I think while you are thinking about your own gains, which is nothing is wrong about that, right? But you also must think about from the company's point of view, what are they actually looking out for? What are they actually planning to do in the future? And then see how you can map back to that, right? And see whether as you continue to work towards that goals that they have, whether that maybe that salary can increase in phases rather than one shot, right? Because as HR, we also want to know you can do it, right? Because everybody will tell me they can do it, but I don't have. It's a gamble on as HR and to put in another 500-600, right, to this person, then knowing later it cannot work out, right? So we also want to set you up for success. So it's always another way to do it is maybe you want to phase your pay increment as part of the solution. That's one, and then. Sometimes sometimes you also know, you have to decide when you want to end the conversation, right? Because then maybe this is not the place for you, right? And then you decide that maybe somewhere else who can pay more will be a better choice. But then again, you must think about not just sometimes about the monetary, but of course your career progression. Because when you go to a new place, you have to start all over again to prove your worth or your abilities in another new place, as compared to the current place that they already have some understanding of your performance already. Yeah. So that's the part to your first question. So your second question was.
So when exactly would it be a good time to ask for a pay raise? Like, is it perhaps after X number of months or years in a company? When is there a perfect timing to it?
I wouldn't say that there's no perfect timing. I think it's actually how much research you have done, not just in terms of what the market is paying, but also what are your capabilities and achievements so far. When you really think that you are performing perhaps 1 or 2 grade higher than your current grade. So for example, if you look at your director and you're thinking like, hey, actually I'm doing the work of my director, maybe that's the time you should ask, right? But if let's say, if you compare maybe someone with someone 1 to 2 grade higher, but no, you haven't actually been doing that level of job of work, then maybe this is not the time. But then you can also, of course, ask your HR and say, what will it take for me to reach that 1 to 2 grade higher than I? Right? Yeah, so there is no perfect timing. But of course, when you ask your boss, is a very critical moment. Like, don't ask when on leave, when they are very busy scrambling to do hybrid work arrangement, trying to arrange with those. There are also timing where you should have conversations lah.
Yeah, so I have to check the weather report lah. Don't start a conversation when you know that your boss is going through a divorce and you're going to ask, hey, I want more money. Or
Correct.
And I think people also have to be cognizant of the fact that the company obviously have to be doing well. So for the listener who may be working in any hospitality industry right now, I think now may not be the best timing for you to raise that kind of conversation because it's really in survival mode right now.
Yeah.
So with that, I also want to just take a pause here and just encourage our listeners, if you have any questions that you want to ask Jerviel here, anything related to HR, how HR think, what actually go on behind the scene, feel free to put it into the message wherever you are viewing this so that we can pick it up and later on pass across to Jerviel. In fact, we actually already have one new question.
Yeah.
It just came in, and this one is pretty interesting, and I think it's something you definitely can relate to. So this question is about your experience in the social service sector. So for someone who is looking to add value as a business partner in a social service organization, what are some of the things this person should look at? Can you give one or two examples?
Okay. I assume that is the HR business partner, right? I think one of the key traits is that a lot of, I would say my own personal experience, I think there will be a certain group of HR professionals in social service sector still revolving around paperwork, coordination and stuff like that. And it's always about, we are a social service organization, we are a charity organization. What will set the business partner apart from these people is the mindset should be, how can I help my social service organization to future-proof itself? How can I help my social service organization to run like a business? I mean, to be honest, a social service organization is also a business. They have to be sustainable so that they can help more people. But a lot of times people think that, don't need you just rely on government funding, enough already. No, that's not good enough, right? You can't always depend on government funding because there's also things like funds that you have to raise and all that. So I think the HR should also look at future-proofing. I mentioned future-proofing the organization. So how should you go about things like, how should you go about developing talents? How can you make social service as attractive like a tech firm? I don't think a lot of people have thought about that, we are just waiting for, maybe someone who has a very good heart will join my organization. Everybody has a good heart, but when it comes to road hit the tire, whoever pays me more, right? So I would say that the good HR business partner will look at how to make the organization attractive. Sometimes it revolves around changing the culture, that maybe you shouldn't run like a social service organization, but you should run a little bit more business. Yeah, that's why I would say that's a differentiating thing.
So I hope that addressed the question from one of our listeners. Another thing that our audience would be curious to learn, and I think this may be due to some of the not so positive experience people may have with HR. Sometimes, in their opinion, although HR has the word human in front of it, but not exactly human firstly. Some HR tends to lack empathy, understanding, especially when things go south. And I think we've seen this many times. One of the most recent cases, actually not recent, but I think we all remember what happened when BFS have to do a restructuring exercise. And then it came out in the newspaper, why my severance like that lah, this and that lah. How come HR didn't do anything? What do you think has gone on during that period?
Wow. I can't really go into specific ideas or feedback on what exactly went in the organization itself when handling that, right? But I would say that based on my experience or based on my own reading and all that, I think it's perhaps that HR sometimes becomes the last few people to receive the news, right? So again, this is really about how HR can add value, which is HR should move beyond just coordinating retrenchment lah, printing letter. This is a retrenchment
letter. Messenger.
Yeah. They should go beyond that and say, maybe at the very front, they should really kind of know like whether how the business is doing and whether there needs to be a 6 months plan to improve that situation already. Maybe it could have been caught earlier, and HR could have been at that earlier stage to talk about it already, right? Maybe looking at other kind of job arrangement before coming down to, retrenchment. Yeah, so I would say that it's about HR moving up the value chain to the top of the funnel and start working from there. So I would guess that might have, prevented that situation whereby it wasn't the best package, or or people were not treated fairly or respectably. Yeah.
So in a way, in terms of the prioritization, I guess within those companies, HR perhaps is not being highly prioritized, and because of that, they are often overlooked, bypassed. And on another note, is there something, if you're a HR working in those kind of company, what's the likelihood that you can actually change things or improve things? Because these are in a way telltale sign of bigger behaviors within the organization, especially for employees who are non-HR. If they were to witness something like this through different telltale signs, should they take it as red flag and okay, I think I better start polishing up my resume and consider somewhere else because the HR here like no power one.
I guess your question is about the HR itself, right? I would say that again, HR should really fight to get a seat at the table. And that's what I personally went through before. I was I didn't get to be invited or to get a seat in one of the management meeting. Not ever. So I become like the receiver of the message of whatever happened in that meeting itself. And the thing is, I also try a lot of ways, try to make some maybe change in terms of culture, trying to implement performance management and all that. But because I don't get to sit in that table, it's very hard for me to get the buy-in from every single one. And truth be told, right, I didn't stay there long enough because I realized that apparently the focus wasn't really a lot on people. It was about business, which is not wrong, right? I mean, a business operates to survive on profitability and revenue and stuff like that. But I would say that number one, HR, whoever listening out there, if you're HR, fight yourself way into the management meeting, right? Fight yourself into that department meeting. Understand the P&L. A lot of the HR people, they don't go and read the P&L of their business unit that they're supporting. You should. You shouldn't keep looking at the MC. It doesn't help that much, right? You should go and read the P&L, go and understand what the strategic goals and directions of that business unit, and then start formulating strategies and tactics. Sometimes these business leaders, they do not know how their business decisions or strategies will affect people. They just only thought about the business. But you play an important part to go in there and say, hey, when you make this pivotal business change, you're going to impact the people here because they don't have the skill sets, they're not prepared, it will change the dynamic. These are the things that a HR can bring out because you are on the ground. You should know the folks quite well as well. Right? So fight your way in and all that. But the second thing from my own lesson is sometimes there's only so much you can do, and it's ultimately whether the buy-in and the support from the management. Right? So if you realize that it's not going to happen, sometimes it's okay to just throw in a towel and say, you know what? Maybe there's another place that will appreciate and values people first.
Thank you. And nicely delivered. And again, just to reiterate to the HR people who's listening to this, read more P&L, read less MC. You'll really be very helpful. And
Yes.
Moving on to another question, and this is more related to career search. Would it be better to go through a recruiter or directly to a company when one were to apply for a job?
I would say that there is no better or, right? I think it's really casting your net a bit wider. So don't have to go either or. Go all, right? Go with both, right? Because a recruiter will have sometimes what we call hidden jobs, right? Which means these jobs are not published at the company website, but the recruiter know because sometimes the HR actually hire these recruiters to go and specifically go at certain types of people rather than posting on a lot of job portals. So yes, you should go through recruiter so that because recruiter can also refer you to a lot of other jobs itself, right? But also don't stop going to companies because a recruiter also may have, a lot of resume and sometimes they only float the 2 or 3 that that they can best place lah, because ultimately it's about commission, right? So then you also should also widen your net to go and apply company on your own. I would say that one of the better way, or the more effective way I've seen is actually using LinkedIn. So start building connections with people, with CEOs or HR, or people who are in the fields that you want to join, right? So let's say you want to go become a digital marketer. You want to pivot to a digital marketer. You should go and connect with a lot of digital marketers out there, right? To understand what's in the market, what kind of skill sets are required, because these are the best way to kind of learn what's exactly needed by the market, right? And then when you start building these connections, you're gonna get job opportunities. And truth be told, right, throughout all my work experiences, right, I think almost half came through referrals because I built the connections. Yeah, because they have the insider news, man. They know like, oh, a new department is going to happen, going to set up, you see, this is not posted yet, but it's already an inside news. So you definitely want to get ahead in that sense.
And I noted actually on your LinkedIn, you mentioned that in a couple of your jobs, you actually got it through LinkedIn as well. That's interesting.
Yep.
And going back to what you mentioned earlier on, in trying to build more connections through LinkedIn, for people who may be new to LinkedIn entirely, let's say today I just set up my account, what's a step-by-step process that you would advise to them to really reach to what you have mentioned in trying to build up a solid pool of connections that, of course, you can try to leverage from there? And how do you actually leverage? Is it just message them, hey, got job or not? Or how do you do it in a much more productive manner?
Right. Of course, LinkedIn itself, they have a lot of all these step-by-step things that you can go and take a look. I'll just highlight a few key ones, right? I think first and foremost, when you go in, don't do what Adrian say, right? Go, hey, do you have job for me? You're going to scare the hell out of people, right? Because people do not know you even, right? So you act like you're very familiar with them. That will kind of piss people off. So always go in with that mentality and sincerely connect with people, because you really want to know what does a digital marketer do? What does a software engineer do? What does a company do, right? What's the opportunity in e-commerce? Show that interest that you want to learn, and maybe just ask for like 5 to 10 minutes of their time. Most of the time, okay, not most of the time, maybe out of the 10 requests you send out, maybe 2 will respond to you. And that's good enough, which means those 2 actually don't mind helping you. And those 2 are actually good connection that you should keep, right? So start doing that. I also started like following a lot of companies, or follow a lot of thought leaders, like Richard Branson or Simon Sinek and all that. I start following them, right? And then a lot of times they will also, as influencers themselves, they will actually post a lot of content every day, right? So what you can do to build somehow your presence or your credibility is also, maybe if they have a post that you like, right, you can reshare and write your thoughts about it. You don't have to write a long article about it, but just some of your own personal thoughts. Because what happened is, actually as a recruiter, right, I will go in to see my applicants' LinkedIn profile page. I will look at what they post. Because if they're always posting things like against politics, things like that, I'm a bit wary, right? But if they're posting things like, they're very interested in, let's say, Bitcoin, e-commerce and stuff like that, right? Then I was like, yeah, okay, they are. I mean, we post things that we like, right? So your whatever you post out there is actually tells a little bit about yourself also, right? So I will also go in and read those posts, and that will help you to gain some traction. And then eventually, I think you should also start writing some of your top posts, because every one of us who has gone through the career journey definitely has stories to share, right? I also share my own stories on LinkedIn very recently also, and I think recently I wrote an article about myself and a lot of my peers who were being judged for having very short stints of work, and that garnered a lot of eyeballs and all that. You see, we all have stories that we can tell, of course, in a very professional and not the throwing rant and angst on people, but you can start doing that, right? And sometimes, even as a recruiter, I'll go in and read and try to understand, what my candidate has gone through on the human side of things. Yeah, so these are just some quick tips on setting up your LinkedIn. But I mean, there's a whole lot of materials on LinkedIn Learning that you can definitely access to learn how to build up your LinkedIn profile.
And on short job stints, obviously it is not unique to you. Even for myself, for people who go to my LinkedIn, there's a period of time where my stints are also very short. And this really jive well with one of our next question by a listener, Joel Lim. Basically, Joel likes to find out your thoughts on job hopping for reasons of maybe salary, better job prospect. They're more aligned with the current goal. But I think how I want to phrase this is, Firstly, if you are someone with very short job stints, would that truly be a handicap, especially from the eyes of a HR? And how should I, and if it is indeed a handicap, what can the job seeker do or try to paint across in order to reduce that effect?
Okay, I'm going to try to address these two questions just with one answer. Okay, I try because I feel that they are kind of connected in that some sense. I think for us as recruiter, when we look at someone who is short stints and all that, of course the immediate question, okay, very shook from the kneecap is like, how come so short? Is it stay or not? Will he stay or not? Is it a high flat risk? It's true, okay. I mean, we all have these questions, right? But it is the next layer of question that HR don't ask is why. We only saw the what, but we didn't ask the why, right? So to a lot of the HR practitioners out there, please also go and find out about the why, right? The thing is, I think from HR side is we want to understand why you make all these movements, let's say within 2 to 3 years, right? The last thing you want is you are the type whereby, oh, quarrel with boss one time, quit. OT 1 week, quit. Cannot deliver this, quit. Cannot persuade boss, quit. Right? You know, then that will tell us a lot about your resilience and your grit, right? But if you quit and for valid reasons, and I've seen it before and I've experienced it myself, is you quit maybe because you have caregiving duties. I just mentioned a finance manager who had to quit his job, right, to do caregiving duties. You had to quit because you were in a very abusive environment, verbally abusive environment. Or maybe you quit whereby your boss keeps saying, I'm going to increase your pay, everything, next year will increase your pay, next year never really come, right? So there are valid reasons that we understand, but we want to make sure that these are in a way solid and justifiable reasons, and not because you cannot tahan a bit of stress and then you just throw letter. That's what we want to avoid, right? And to all my HR practitioners out there, please, right, don't make that kind of quick judgment on people who have short stints. I myself have short stints. I am one of those resume that if a HR look at it, will be like, huh, why you like that? Why? We all have gone through roller coaster of life, right? All of us have made bad career decisions. Come on, we all did that, right? We made a bad career decision. I thought I would like marketing, but actually I didn't like. I couldn't perform in marketing. You thought that you could be singing, but you didn't, right? Sometimes it happens, and I think HR should take a more human perspective or lens when seeing all these things, right? Yeah, but of course, then to the job, to a candidate or job seeker or whoever they're doing career switch, yeah. Again, you when you want to quit, I always say, please touch your heart and say you have tried your best in that task before you quit, right? If let's say you're trying to sell, you're trying to get your organization to adopt certain technology or certain framework, right? Have you tried your best to a point you can touch your heart and say, yeah, you did it. You have tried all sorts of ways, but it just didn't work out. Then maybe it's the time you can say, okay, maybe I'll consider leaving, because no matter how much I try, it's not going to happen. Yeah, so I think that's also my advice to the job seekers out there, and then my separate advice to HR.
So for job seekers, first thing, of course, prevention is better than cure lah. Don't anyhowly throw letter if you can control it. And if you do have to justify, really have to justify the key reason why you are moving on, which is not related to, oh, more salary. Then, of course, from a recruiter, it's like, oh, okay, so if someone tomorrow give you $1 more, you also jump. Yes,
precisely.
Yes. That is not what you want to paint across lah. So, Jerviel, lovely speaking with you today to help us understand more from the HR perspective. And I think you are really a true inspiration for many people who are already in the HR field, or for people who may be keen to join the HR fraternity. And for the second group of audience who may be inspired by you to really consider HR as a profession, where can they start?
Read a lot. I actually think the best books are actually not textbooks, but actually the books that are written. So things like the Netflix, No Rules, Powerful by Patty McCord, these are great books to start with. Follow a lot of thought leaders out there. Of course, there are a lot of formal. Okay, but the thing is, while I'm saying all this, of course, there are certain things that HR should really know, like payroll, Employment Act, all this. So definitely, there are organizations such as SHRI and all that. You should go and learn all this proper and formal, right? All these legal things you have to learn. Another way is also go through the IHRP Certified Professional certification, right? So for me, I went through it. It's tough, especially for me, I didn't come from a HR, educational background, but at least with the certification, you kind of know where you stand, and then you kind of be connected to a larger pool of professionals who are also equally certified. And I know that they share a lot of resources. I was in the WhatsApp chat group the past 1 year, and during the COVID circuit breaker, right, that chat group was like, wow, very supportive, because every time when there's a change in travel restriction, all that, the whole professionals will all come and just share their thoughts and their challenges. So that's one way, right, to also learn through other people's experiences or other HR people's experiences as well.
Thanks, Jerviel. Thank you so much
No problem.
for joining us today on this lovely Thursday evening. And thank you so much to all the audience for spending time with us. Stay tuned tomorrow for more good content. And if you want to hang out with us, join our Telegram group and also become a member so you can receive early releases, premium content, as well as closed-door discussion, plus a community to learn together with. Sign up to become a member today. Head over to thefinancialcoconut.com for more details. This is Adrian, your host for today, and I'll be signing off for the last episode of our daily live session on career. Thank you so much. Take care. Have a good evening. Goodbye.
Bye-bye. Take care.